On this, let's speak to Open Secrets Director Hennie Van Vuuren. Hennie, thank you for joining us again. Just your thoughts on yesterday's court proceedings for this application of a 3-week postponement. Hennie, just press your audio button so we can hear you.
Apologies, Annika.
Got you.
Good morning to you and viewers. I think it's extraordinary when we consider what's happened last week in KZN and the fact that we are able to continue with the trial in the manner that we have. It must speak something to the maintenance of the system of the rule of law in South Africa. So I think important that the hearing did take place. There's obviously an opportunity for Mr. Zuma and his lawyers to make their arguments. But I think in the words of Wim Trengrove, the advocate for the state, this is Stalingrad season 27. And I think South Africans certainly feel that way. There is a great desire, which is often repeated, and the point made that the former president wishes to have his day in court. Certainly, we heard the same thing from the arms company Thales, who stands accused of bribing Jacob Zuma in order to ensure that there was a cover-up for the crimes that he and Thales, the European arms company, benefited from. But at the same time, the strategy over the long term has been one of delay. And I don't think we should be surprised at all by what happened yesterday in court. I think Mr. Zuma and his team are very worried at the outcome of this case once the matter goes to trial. I think the argument that Billy Downer should be removed, for example, because he has political motive, that they somehow want prosecutors to have some, don't quite understand, a clear mind when they enter this space. Understandably, they need to focus on the facts, but understandably, we also need prosecutors who have expertise, who've been prosecuting these matters over a number of years and understand the intricacies in order for the state to make its case before the judge. And I think these are all shenanigans on the side of Mr. Zuma in order to ensure that he is able to delay the process as long as he can, possibly while another parallel political process plays itself out where he hopes he may well be very much more successful.
Just, I was going to ask you if it was prudent to look at the legal proceedings against what's going out against a political backdrop. Your thoughts on that? I thought it might be a good idea, actually, we were discussing earlier, that it is something to take into account.
Yeah, Annika, I think it's an interesting question, and I think that the challenge that we have as South Africans is there are so many narratives. There's such complexity in our politics that we often struggle to see the connections between some of those themes. And I think it's really important for us to recognize that the evidence that we've seen thus far at the Zondo Commission implicates Mr. Zuma's allies, the Guptas, very clearly, many people within the state who he and the governing party appointed and were close to him. But thus far, we haven't seen the evidence of bribes being paid directly to him. We understand that his family members live off the largesse of the Gupta stolen money in Dubai, but not necessarily Mr. Zuma directly. The arms deal is different. It would mean that Mr. Zuma won't go to prison for a period of potentially 4 months, which is what he faces now for his contempt of court proceedings. It means that he may go to prison for 10 or 15 years and have to serve 5 or 7 of those years. That means he might see out the rest of his days in prison. And in a way, Annika, I think it's important for us to recognize this is not just a side battle, Mr. Zuma involved in the arms deal. I think it's important to recognize what Mr. Zuma and his allies need to do is they need this case to be removed at all costs. The question I think needs to be asked is there were many reasons for last week's violence taking place in KwaZulu-Natal. There were food riots, there's hunger, there's great need, but there was a political instigation. Might the political instigation have been, let's ensure that Mr. Zuma is freed from prison because of the violence that's taking place. He won't have to go to prison for his contempt of court to the Constitutional Court. And then it's going to be very difficult for the NPA to try and haul him in front of another court, which is in fact happening this week, for other crimes. And in a way, the long game was to ensure that he would never be held to account for these crimes in the arms deal. And of course, he benefits from that. The European arms company, Thales, who is linked to the bribery, would have benefited from that. And I think those are the hard questions that we need to be asking. I think those are the questions that state security and others need to be asking instead of putting their heads in the sand, which I think is what we're seeing right now.
Thank you so much for joining us, for your insight as well as always, Hennie. Hennie Van Vuuren from Open Secrets, giving us an overview there of Jacob Zuma's special plea application that was heard yesterday. Judgment is due to be handed down whether his postponement for 3 weeks will be granted or not at 10 o'clock. And our reporter Siphamandla Goge has been tracking the developments of this case. He's still standing. Mr. Goge, you're still there.
Indeed, we are trying. We're waiting for 10 o'clock to bring it to you live and direct when Judge Pete Koen hands down that judgment. The former president is arguing that he wants to be physically present in court. The proceedings have been virtual. His legal team is vehemently opposed to it. He says this will infringe on his constitutional right to have a fair trial because he may decide to give oral evidence when this application of having the state lead prosecutor Billy Downer is being heard. So we're waiting for that judgment at 10 o'clock.
Siphamandla, as you reminded us, this is a virtual hearing. The Pietermaritzburg High Court and the Durban High Court, they are currently closed. The area has been blockaded. There's no access in and out. And Zuma's lawyers yesterday saying that they're in Johannesburg. Jacob Zuma's at the Escort prison, and they haven't had enough time to consult with him, and a fear that any consultation that they do electronically may be intercepted by state security.
Absolutely, and I think that's one of the biggest concerns here, the issue of privacy. You know, when the legal team has to consult with their client, they need privacy to do that. Now, with this being a virtual consultation or a telephonic consultation, there is no guarantee that it is safe, it is private, that no one will intercept that. But most importantly, it seems as if the former president's team is adamant that him not being physically present in court, that will be a violation of his constitutional right. But let's remind our viewers that it's not only the former president who wants to be physically present in court. Co-accused number 2, French arms company Thales, they are also joining the application in saying they want to be physically present here. They think it will be unfair on them. But I've got Ayanda Shazi here, who is a legal expert, a lawyer from Ayanda Shazi and Associates. Thank you very much for your time. Let's talk about this thing of virtual versus physical proceedings being had here. How crucial is this judgment that is coming up in setting a precedent when it comes to these matters being had virtually or physically?
There are instances where the state can actually make an application in court, more especially if it's involving a minor child, a person that's viewed as a minor person, and the procedure can actually be led virtually, in a sense that they are behind a circuit television. So proceedings are led in court, and an application can be made by a prosecutor, and everything can be done with an intermediary who will actually interpret for the child. But here, that's now they're saying that no, this is not going to work in this setup, because based on the aspects of we need to have a one-on-one with our clients. They also stated before they led evidence that they had even had issues with even making him sign the affidavit, to illustrate to the court that the difficult situation that they're in actually speaking to the client and actually having him sign certain documents. Like I stated before, one of the legal representatives actually said that he wanted a 10-minute adjournment to try and speak to his client. I think that was his strategy, to just show the court the difficult times that he has in actually speaking to his client. Now, another situation that they might raise is the issue of privacy as well. Okay, let's say the matter stands down for a few minutes and he wants to speak to his client. How sure are they that what is being said is not going to be recorded or is going to be used later on? Because obviously if it's in a court setup, it's a matter of the matter standing down. They go either to a room or to the grills, and they have a one-on-one session, and they prep him and they prepare as to what he needs to say. But in this setup, what will happen? Does that mean that the Zoom link will be switched off and they call him on the side? How effective is that actual consultation? So now it comes back to the right to a fair trial. So, and the procedure that is being followed. Now the judge, in actually giving out this judgment, has to look at all of that. That okay, if he decides that he says that this application is dismissed, what are the implications of that? Does that mean that we shoot straight to the actual application that's here before court? And also if Zuma's lawyers are also going to appeal that decision, and also them asking for a 3-week adjournment can also benefit everyone else.
And that 3 weeks also, even though it's an unrelated matter, but can factor in the outstanding or the pending Concord judgment on the former president's application to rescind their judgment.
Exactly. Us as attorneys as well, even last week we got a directive that all our matters are not going to proceed here in court. So they also stated that when they were making the application, that currently the courts are not functioning. They're only going to function after the 26th. So they factoring in this 3 weeks to correlate with the directive that has been given by the Chief Justice that, you know what, all the matters are going to be postponed because of the unrest that is happening here in the country. So they're saying that no one is going to be prejudiced. In any event, courts are not functioning well. Let's give our clients a chance for him to postpone this matter and him to come here physically here at court. But the state is saying, no, everything can run smoothly. We've been running it thus far. Why don't we carry on as it is? So it's just a balance of both those arguments. The judge needs to look at all those factors and actually come out with a decision, and also the implications going forward, because everything that happens here at court is going to be precedent for us attorneys going forward.
It's a tough one for Judge Pete Koen. Thank you very much for time. That is Ayanda Shazi from Ayanda Shazi and Associates, as we await Judge Pete Koen to hand down that judgment at 10 o'clock.
That's right. Thank you so much, Sipamandle Goge, outside the Pietermaritzburg High Court. And today